did Voldemort get his wand back? Hey brother, I know, the wand chooses the wizard, but the wand maker who sells this wand to an 11-year-old boy must have known something was up. The thing is though, Harry always kind of had this funny feeling about Ollivander, like he's not totally sure how he feels about him. And I kind of get it, because I think he's so enthusiastic about seeing wands do what wands can do that he would literally send off a budding megalomaniac into the world just to kind of see what happens next.
After all, he who must not be named did great things. Terrible, yes, but great.
Wande the Diem sees the wand. Point is though that Voldemort's wand is of massive importance to the story. I mean, it features a feather from Fawkes the Phoenix, making it one of just 2 wands made from Fawkes. Of course, the other one goes to Harry, who, again, when Ollivander realized what was up with the Holly Wand and choosing Harry, had to know it wasn't going to end without incident. And of course, by incident, I mean Wizarding World War. But the connection between these 2 wands is so vital to the overall story. It's the critical thing that protects Harry against Voldemort during his return in the graveyard. And it's that particular duel that infuses some of Voldemort's own magic into Harry's wand, which comes in handy during the Battle of the Seven Potters, where, of its own accord, Harry's wand comes to life and blasts Voldemort back with golden flames of fire. Flames of fire, yeah, I heard it. Okay, can we just okay. All of that is only possible though because Voldemort has somehow recovered his original wand by the time he is resurrected in the graveyard. And it's kind of shocking when you consider the last moment he really had it, because it was the night at the Potters when his spell blasted backwards so powerfully that his body was destroyed, the power of his horcruxes took effect, and Voldemort was diminished to, in his own words, an existence less than the most feeble ghost. Meaning his wand is most likely lost in the rubble of the destroyed Potter house, but who collected it and when? Today, we find out. Hey, brother! So, there actually is an out-of-universe explanation from an interview that delves into this detail, yet its timing remains tantalizingly tricky and the rationale rather ridiculous. Wormtail, desperate to curry favor, salvaged it from the place it had fallen and carried it to him. I admit, that would have been a bit of a feat for a rat, but they are highly intelligent creatures. So primarily, Wormtail procured it from the Potters and promptly presented it to Voldemort. Yet, this response reckons not the precise period of procurement. It seems Wormtail seamlessly strings it together in a singular swoop, suggesting that subsequent to slipping away from Harry, Sirius, and Lupin, he swiftly scurries to snatch the wand from the Potter's place, then traverses to the woods to tender it to Voldemort. Which, fair enough, but I have a myriad of misgivings about this explanation, namely that it means Voldemort's wand was left languishing in the ruins of the Potter's place for 13 years? That may be believable if it wasn't also the scene of the most notorious Dark Wizard's demise and the site of a sinister double slaying. I mean, within hours of it happening, we know that both Sirius and Hagrid arrive at the house to check on James and Lily or to collect Harry. But then on top of that, I think we can safely assume that at some juncture, James and Lily's bodies are respectfully removed from the residence, right? Like, they bury them in the cemetery and don't just leave their rotting corpses in the house. Right? And you'd for sure want to confirm that it was Voldemort who did it to prove that he'd fallen, right? And a great way to do that would be to recover the murder weapon if you could. Yes? Plus, affirming Voldemort's villainy and verifying his vanquish would be paramount. Thus, procuring the murder weapon presents a potent pathway to pinning the perpetrator definitively, thereby bolstering the case for his demise. And we know about Priori Incantatem, so undoubtedly the Ministry, or any inquiring entity, would eagerly embrace the opportunity to obtain Voldemort's wand, which was presumably positioned left of Lily's lifeless form, given her demise in the same space where Voldemort's vile spell met its match. Even if the Ministry missed the mark, obviously Dumbledore deduced the fate of the fallen wand and is interested in it, indubitably. Certainly he knows Voldemort has the first Phoenix wand because of Ollivander's timely telegraph regarding Harry's profound procurement of its brother. Yes, I know they don't use telegraphs, but I think you see what I'm going for. If Wormtail is the one who gets it though, then the only logical leap is that he did so before any of those other potential parties could have, because, of course, they would have recovered it if they could. But if that's the case, then it implies that Peter prevails before Sirius arrives at the scene, swiftly seizes the wand, and scurries before being promptly pursued by Sirius and playing possum to the wizarding world for 13 years.
This is Scabbers, by the way. Pathetic, isn't he?
Of course, that would also mean that during this debacle, he ditches his own dear wand, but deftly clings to Voldemort's wand for a daunting duration of 13 years? Sorry, 13 years. Gotta be consistent. Boy, how do you think the Weasleys would feel to find out that they were, like, housing Voldemort's wand the entire time? But Peter possessing the wand that whole time doesn't make sense, because if he'd had it on him the whole time, he'd have it on him after he was transformed back into a man in the Shrieking Shack, right? I mean, I'm assuming that when you transform, your wand goes with you, which does seem to be the case. I guess it's not an ironclad imperative to wield your wand for transformation, as Sirius's Azkabanian slip showcases, but nonetheless, Peter does seem to lean on a wand for his transformation, and he hastily grabs Lupin's wand to revert to his rodent guise, following Lupin's lycopanthic shift. Pettigrew had died for Lupin's dropped wand. Expelliarmus! Harry yelled, pointing his own wand at Pettigrew. Lupin's wand flew into the air, high out of sight. "Stay where you are!" Harry shouted, running forward. Too late. Pettigrew had transformed. The pivotal point is if Peter still possessed Voldemort's wand the whole time, he wouldn't have needed to paw for Lupin's because he'd just have Voldemort's, but he doesn't, meaning he didn't plunder the wand from the Potter's house the night of their plight. Actually, on that note, how did Sirius eventually get his own wand back? Or how did all the Death Leaders who escaped in Order of the Phoenix get their wands back? Were they all just allowed to leave them at home before sentencing? Because that seems ridiculous. I mean, lest we recall, Hagrid had his wand split in half because another student, Tom Riddle, accused him of housing a monster that killed a girl. Hagrid lost his wand due to a non-wand related murder. Oh no, but the Death Eaters, they don't crack those wands. I mean, why would you? Oh, they left them at home. No biggie, they'll be in Azkaban for life anyway. Let's not go to the effort of breaking a pencil to be extra super sure or anything. Regardless of those distracting details, though, the continuous crux contends that if Peter didn't get the wand in the attack's aftermath, and he couldn't have found it at the Potters post-escaping Harry, Sirius, and Lupin, then when did he wanded he? Well, wonder of wonders, I reckon all of the information resides readily within the reading material. In fact, we've already given you most of the pieces. Have you solved it? If not, don't worry, there still remains a solitary shard of omitted evidence, which is revealed on the day of Buckbeak's bucksecution. At that point in the story, Peter's parted paths with poor Ron, perpetrating yet another pretend demise, leading Ron to presume Crookshanks devoured Scabbers. If only, am I right? Full video by clicking the card. But behold, Scabbers survived, seeking sanctuary within Hogwarts' hallowed halls, harboring in Hagrid's humble hut, only to be rediscovered by Ron. Hermione picked up the milk bottle to pour some into the jug. She let out a shriek. "Ron, I don't believe it, it's Scabbers!" Ron gaped at her. "What are you talking about?" Hermione carried the milk jug over to the table and turned it upside down. With a frantic squeak and much scrambling to get back inside, Scabbers the rat came sliding out onto the table. And now we have all of the puzzle pieces, so pause to solve if you want to ponder. Here's my theory. If you'll rewind with me all the way back to the night of the Potter's perilous plight. James and Lily lie lifeless, their home in ruins. Voldemort, a mere wisp of his former self, flees in fear. Harry, miraculously unharmed, save for the iconic lightning-shaped scar, survives. Then to the house, humble Hagrid arrives on the scene to collect baby Harry on Dumbledore's orders. And as he meandered through the maelstrom, he acquired Harry and serendipitously stumbled upon Voldemort's wand and pocketed it. That's actually a different Harry Potter language joke. If you know, you know. Pocketed it, pocketed it, pocketed it, pocketed it. And in pure Hagrid fashion, I perceived this as a prudent precaution, purely for protection. He's not procuring the wand for profit or to preserve it for posterity, or even with any prospect of personally practicing its powers. He just figured it shouldn't be left lying there. Then he delivers Harry to Dumbledore at the Dursleys, before returning to his hut at Hogwarts and simply sets the wand aside.
I shouldn't have told you that. I should not have told you that.
In my mind, it's like the unicorn hair he has just lying about his home. He has has these treasures of immense value, but doesn't perceive their potential profits. But in fact, it does turn out to be troublesome, because fast forward to prisoner and one Peter Pettigrew has surreptitiously settled in Hagrid's hut and inexplicably discovers Voldemort's wand. And naturally it's notable knowledge, but Peter wouldn't act on it right away. I mean, his whole MO is merely maneuvering towards the mightiest maestro on the metaphorical merry-go-round and having them provide protection. And upon unearthing the wand, not much would have changed for him for the past 13 years. He's been content to just coexist with the Weasleys. I mean, if Voldemort's not in power, he has no reason to pursue him.
This is Scabbers, by the way. Pathetic, isn't he?
But behold, Wormtail's true identity is revealed by Lupin and Sirius, who are dead set on killing him until Harry does his whole chosen one thing and pleads for mercy. What a wizard.
I'm the chosen one.
In either event, it means Peter is now the one who is about to face the Dementors, thus providing him proper motivation to pursue Voldemort, and he even knows the perfect bargaining piece. Because presumably Voldemort would be pretty peeved with Peter, as his disclosure led directly to his downfall, but if Peter can proffer him his old wand, So the group exits the Whomping Willow, Lupin transforms into the werewolf, and Peter, seizing the scene, reverts back into a rat, scampers down to Hagrid's hut, steals the wand, and stealthily scurries toward the shattered Albanian woods where whispers of Voldemort's whereabouts abound. Also, I know there's never really any proof for this, but I kind of like the idea that because he has the wand, it helps him find Voldemort, kind of like a wand finds the wizard sort of situation. Now, the noteworthy point you may raise is, why wouldn't Hagrid divulge this information to Dumbledore? I mean, that feels the fundamentally Hagrid thing to do. And I agree. I actually think Hagrid would tell Dumbledore, but I don't think it's out of the question that Dumbledore deems Hagrid dependable for defending this particular possession. For one, Dumbledore simply trusts Hagrid. He trusts him to collect and guard the Philosopher's Stone.
Who told you about Fluffy?
And to get Harry from the Potter's place and from the Dursleys' dwelling.
Sorry about that.
Plus, there's a striking simplicity in securing such an artifact in plain view. I mean, who would ever envision investigating Hagrid's hut for Voldemort's wand? And Dumbledore has always known the truth about the entire Chamber of Secrets saga, that it was truly Tom Riddle and not Hagrid. How truly poetically poignant it is then that Hagrid should end up owning the wand wielded by the wrongdoer who got his wand whacked. But there you go, that is how Voldemort got his original wand bat. What do you all think? Let me know all of your thoughts in the towel section down below.
Have you ever wondered how Tom Riddle found the Chamber of Secrets? Hey, brother! In year 2, after the chamber is opened, the students rush to learn about it, but nobody really seems to have any existing knowledge about the chamber itself, which is kind of crazy since it was opened just 50 years ago and someone died. Heck, some of the same staff is even still at the school. Looking at you, Dumbledore. Hermione herself is at a loss, having left her copy of Hogwarts history at home. The same reason everybody wants it, said Hermione, to read up on the legend of the Chamber of Secrets. What's that? Said Harry quickly. That's just it. I can't remember, said Hermione, biting her lip, and I can't find the story anywhere else. Oh, you're telling me Hermione can't remember something that's in Hogwarts history? I mean, I'm sorry, but that just means it's not in there.
I read about it in Hogwarts history.
My point is, in the present, the students have a good reason they could know about the chamber, but when Tom Riddle is at the school, how on earth does he even know to look for it? Hasn't the chamber been closed for centuries? Does he have reason to believe he is the heir of Slytherin? We know he is very interested in his heritage and eventually tracks down the Gaunts and his father and paternal grandparents, which is when he gets the ring and makes it into a horcrux. But Dumbledore says the diary was the first horcrux. The careless way in which Voldemort regarded this horcrux seemed most ominous to me. It suggested that he must have made, or been planning to make, more horcruxes, so that the loss of his first would not be so detrimental. I did not wish to believe it, but nothing else seemed to make sense. I'll tell you what's not making sense is the discovery of the deeply hidden, highly secretive room that you have no idea even exists. Heck, even if Tom knew of the legend of the chamber, how could he have even located the secret entrance in the girls' bathroom of all places? There is nothing special pointing him there, and he's not even the first person to ever have looked for it. Professor Bin says the castle has been searched many times, and 1,000 years of searching have never led anyone to discover it. But out of nowhere, a kid who doesn't know the legend or has any reason to think that he's related to Slytherin just happens upon it? I mean, even when Harry miraculously finds it, it's only because Tom Riddle had first, and the victim of his opening is literally still in the same room. Where exactly did you see the eyes? Said Harry. Somewhere there, said Myrtle, pointing vaguely toward the sink in front of her toilet. But guys, we have cracked it. Today we reveal how Tom Riddle found the Chamber of Secrets.
Hey, brother!
Okay, how did Tom Riddle find the chamber? Because remember, Tom is raised in a Muggle orphanage, doesn't know he's a wizard, believes his mom was a Muggle, and has zero leads on his own heritage. The trick to solving this was deciphering a few unusually phrased sentences by Dumbledore, and then doing a bunch of tricky year math, but don't worry y'all, we paid the math budget. The first line that we have is one that we've actually already brought up. It's when Dumbledore says that the diary is the first horcrux. It suggested that he must have made or been planning to make more horcruxes so that the loss of his first would not be so detrimental. I did not wish to believe it, but nothing else seemed to make sense. But here's the thing, the diary is just not the first horcrux. What Dumbledore actually means is just that the diary was the most likely to be destroyed, and that even Voldemort probably realized that. Voldemort always knew that he wanted someone to read it and reopen the chamber so he could get credit for being Slytherin's heir. Well, he didn't want his hard work to be wasted, said Harry. He wanted people to know he was Slytherin's heir because he couldn't take the credit at the time. Quite correct, said Dumbledore, nodding. And you can argue with that sentiment if you want, but really that must be what Dumbledore meant, because the fact is the diary just isn't the first horcrux that Voldemort made. But not to worry, because I too, for the longest time, have believed that the diary came first. 20 years later though, it's kind of blowing my mind that I did not realize that I had the order of the horcruxes wrong for this entire time. But I feel like if I didn't know, I can only assume that the mystery looms large over the fandom, and today we're going to set the record straight. The ring is actually the first horcrux, and the information has been sitting in front of us the entire time. It all comes down to this poorly worded sentence by Dumbledore. In the summer of his 16th year, he left the orphanage to which he returned annually and set off to find his gaunt relatives. Now, this is the problem. 16th year is a bonkers way to phrase this age because it sounds like he is 16, but he's not. He's 15. And things are only made even more confusing because Voldemort is born on December 31st, the day before New Year's. And it could sound like we're splitting hairs here, but trust me, it will make sense. And if I told you that like my daughter Addie had trouble sleeping in her first year, you wouldn't think that I meant after she turned 1 year old. It would be during her first year of life, the period between being born and turning 1, her first year. So the summer of his 16th year is the summer before his 5th year at Hogwarts, which starts in the fall of 1942 and ends in the spring of 1943. Got it?
Brilliant.
But with that clarified, literally everything else about this situation starts to make way more sense. Because we know that Tom Riddle is in his 5th year at Hogwarts when he opened the chamber last, and he himself tells Harry this inside of the diary flashback. Of course I know about the Chamber of Secrets. In my day, they told us it was a legend, that it did not exist. But this was a lie. In my 5th year, the chamber was opened, and the monster attacked several students, finally killing one. But as we've previously pointed out, how on earth would he know where the Chamber of Secrets is during this year? And that's where the Horcrux order becomes extremely vital information, specifically because of where, or more importantly, who he gets the ring from. The Gaunts. Here's more context from our line from before. All he had to go on was the single name Marvolo, which he knew from those who ran the orphanage had been his mother's father's name. Finally, after painstaking research through old books of wizarding families, he discovered the existence of Slytherin's surviving line. In the summer of his 16th year, he left the orphanage, to which he returned annually and set off to find his gaunt relatives. So, young 15-year-old Tom Riddle's discovery and timing for this visit are very important to keep in mind. The summer of his 16th year would be the summer after he's completed year 4 at Hogwarts. But all of his research would bring him to the Gaunt Shack, where he runs into his uncle, Morphin, who, Riddle learns, also speaks Parseltongue, and tells him he looks like the handsome muggle Tom Riddle. "I thought she was that muggle," whispered Morphin. "You look mighty like that muggle." "What muggle?" said Riddle sharply. "That muggle what my sister took a fancy to, that muggle that lives in the big house over the way," said Morphin, and he spat unexpectedly upon the floor between them. "You look right like him, Riddle, but he's older now, isn't he?" He's older than you now, I think on it. This is the first time that Tom learns the identity of his father, and we know it's on this same occasion that he frames Morphin for the murder of his father, which he actually commits, and uses his death to convert the Peveril ring into what we now believe is his first horcrux. What's important about this exchange, though, is that there's a lot of information missing from it. This all has to do with Tom wiping his uncle's memory and leading him to believe that he actually committed the crime himself. But before his memory is wiped, we know that Morphin asks about Slytherin's locket. Riddle came back? He left her, and serve her right, Marion filth, said Morphin, spitting on the floor again. Robbed us, mind, before she ran off. Where's the locket, eh? Where's Slytherin's locket? The locket has, of course, already been sold by Tom's mother, Merope, to Mr. Borgin of Borgin and Burks, his own future employer and target for future Horcrux, which he eventually does succeed in recovering from Hepzibah Smith. Time and story will also eventually inform us that each of the Founder's artifacts have unique magical characteristics to them. Gryffindor's sword is goblin-made, will absorb anything that makes it stronger, and will appear to a Gryffindor in need. Ravenclaw's diadem is of course said to make the wearer more intelligent. Hufflepuff's cup we don't learn the specifics about, but Hepzibah tells Tom, this has been handed down in the family for years and years. Lovely, isn't it? All sorts of powers it's supposed to possess too, but I haven't tested them thoroughly. And while the powers of the locket have never been described, we here at SuperCarlinBrothers have long believed that it contained the instructions on how to enter the Chamber of Secrets. The idea being that the only way to open the locket is exactly how Harry does it in the Forest of Dean, speaking Parseltongue to it. And this is a perfect defense, as only Slytherin's own heirs would be capable of speaking it, and therefore the only ones who can enter his chamber. It's honestly kind of elegant, right? So the idea here is that the Gaunts, who have been in possession of the locket for their whole lives, very well could know the location of the Chamber of Secrets thanks to the locket. In fact, that part isn't even a guess. We know that from the Pottermore archives, that the chamber was in fact open between Slytherin's departure and Tom Riddle's arrival at the school. However, when Hogwarts plumbing became more elaborate in the 18th century, the entrance of the chamber was threatened. Being located on the site of a proposed bathroom, the presence in school at the time of a student called Corvinus Gaunt, direct descendant of Slytherin and antecedent of Tom Riddle, explains how the simple trapdoor was secretly protected, so that those who knew could still access entrance to the chamber even after newfangled plumbing had been placed on top of it. So you might be thinking, well, that's all well and fine, but you yourself mentioned the locket is nowhere to be found. Merope sold it. And that is true, but asking about the whereabouts of the locket is essentially the last meaningful thing that Morphin says before his memory goes completely blank, meaning whatever came next, Tom Riddle was sure to erase from history. Now, we of course have no way to verify that Morphin would have explained what he may have known about the locket, but we do know that Tom eventually goes to great lengths to track it down. But even beyond that, if we just continue our reading from the Pottermore archives, we get this extra bit of information. The Gaunt family could not resist boasting of their knowledge, as nobody else could hear the creature sliding beneath the floorboards, or laterally, through the plumbing. They did not have many believers, and none until Riddle dared unleash the monster on the castle. So the Gaunts alone knew the location of the Chamber of Secrets. They were also known in possession of Slytherin's locket, and they were boastful about their knowledge of the location of the Chamber of Secrets. We also have great reason to believe that Tom visited them on just the one occasion that happened to be on the summer before his 5th year at Hogwarts, where he is made prefect and, wait for it, opens the Chamber of Secrets. And it's all because we've all had the order for the Horcruxes wrong this whole time, but it continues to add up. In Harry's 6th year, he's trying to track down Slughorn's memory, in which we know Voldemort already has the ring because he's wearing it, and in the memory, he is asking Slughorn about making more Horcruxes.
Can you only split the soul once?
I always thought that he'd already made 2 at that point and was just asking about making 7, but it turns out he's only got 1 and also asking about making just more than that, which then immediately leads to Myrtle's death later that year. All the more reason for Slughorn to feel so immensely guilty about the entire affair. Just having a conversation about Horcruxes in and of itself seems bad. Having a conversation about Horcruxes and then someone showing up dead? That's why you erase it. But honestly, guys, this whole thing started because we were just trying to figure out the order. And Jay and I were having a big conversation and a big back and forth about whether or not it was the diary first or the ring. And when we started peeling back these layers, we were like, what if the ring is actually what led to the opening of the chamber, which is what leads to the diary, and then everything seemed to just fall perfectly into place. Hey, brother! Shoot dang, y'all. Earlier this week, we went on a deep dive on items from the wizarding world. We discovered that so many magical objects and creatures are actually sourced from English folklore and not necessarily like from the Potter saga itself. We hit on stuff like boggarts, house elves, velas, redcaps, hinky punks, the Philosopher's Stone itself, and so much more. And one find in particular stood out because it's arguably the central villain of an entire book. It's the basilisk. It turns out that this existed in the mythos long before any of us ever met the boy in the cupboard under the stairs. But no, I'm just kidding. The basilisk isn't truly even the villain of that story. It's the basilisk's master. I mean, who knows? Maybe a basilisk could be quite friendly if it was just always wore a pair of sunglasses and had a master who wanted to do good in the world. But in this particular case, the basilisk master is the subject in question, the one and only Mr. Big Bad himself, Voldemort, aka Tom Riddle. Now, to be fair, you certainly can't nail down his source material perfectly, as there are at least a few different avenues you could draw inspiration from, which we'll aim to cover today. But Voldemort has a few critically unique traits that make the inspiration for his character crystal clear. So today we will discuss, where did Voldemort come from? So first things first, let's just look at the names themselves, Tom Riddle and Voldemort. The name Tom Riddle does have a reasonably interesting backstory in that it was actually taken from a tombstone located in Greyfriars Kirkyard, a cemetery in Edinburgh. Edinburgh? I feel like every single time I say that word, I'm like, I'm taking a leap of faith over here. It's not Edinburgh. I know that much. This same cemetery is actually potentially home to a couple of other iconic wizarding names, including Scrimgeour and Crookshanks, but the most notable has to be Tom Riddle's, which is slightly modified from Thomas Riddell. That's Thomas Riddell. Pronounced Riddell. So you can see the difference. I could see the difference because I see how it's spelled, but you know what I mean. That change in spelling is pretty interesting, but I'll come back to that in just one second. We know that Tom hated his Muggle name, believing it to be far more common, and chose a far more menacing moniker, Voldemort. I guess it's technically supposed to be pronounced Voldemort, but whatevs.
Whatever, I'm getting cheese fries.
The name Voldemort has French origins and is perfect given the Big Baddie's key aim of immortality. VOL or Vol means flight or theft, D means of or from, and Mort means death. So Voldemort translates to fight or theft of death. Pretty on the nose, or lack thereof, if you catch my meaning. The interesting thing, though, is we know that Voldemort despised the name that reflected that of his Muggle father, Tom Riddle Sr., the handsome Muggle that was unwillingly ensnared by a love potion at the hands of Merope Gaunt. But he still obviously worked with what he was given in the name of having a super sweet anagram for unsuspecting 12-year-olds. Actually, if I'm being totally honest with you guys, as a kid, one of the biggest mind-blowing moments came when Tom Riddle from the diary writes Tom Marvolo Riddle in the air and then swishes his wand and has it respell out, I am Lord Voldemort, like. That being said though, this wordplay proved to be a challenge as the story has been translated into 87 different languages, which, fun fact, most of those languages also got their own respective book covers, and some of them are just flat out hilarious. Full video by clicking the card. But you can quickly see how differences in the language would throw a wrench in Diary Tom Riddle's cool party trick. And as a result, we get slightly different variations on his name depending on what language the book has been translated into. For example, in Spanish, he goes by Tom Sorvolo Riddle, a relatively light modification, and allows for Soy Lord Voldemort. Actually, on this exact note though, I also thought I struck gold with the Spanish translation because I heard a rumor that instead of the Dark Lord, his followers refer to him as Señor Tenebroso, which supposedly translated back into Mr. Spooky, but unfortunately that was just a bad translation and it's closer to like Sir Darkness. But you know what? He'll always be Mr. Spooky to me, though. But also moving on, in German, there's Tom Vollorst Riddle, which translates to Ist Lord Voldemort for the respelling, which is not bad either. Apologies in advance because I'm butchering every language right now. My absolute favorite, though, had to be the French translation, though, where it's Tom Elvis Judasor, which turns into Je suis Voldemort. Well, thank you very much.
Je suis Voldemort.
Je suis?
Je suis Voldemort.
Je suis Voldemort.
Je suis Voldemort.
Je suis Voldemort.
Real threatening.
I don't even know what I'm doing right now. Making a fool of myself is what. Ugh. Honestly, I'm not sure what I was dreading more after writing that joke, like the light French or an Elvis impersonation. Let me know how I did. Either way though, moving on from his name, let's talk about Voldemort as a character, because I always sort of felt like his inspiration was a little bit obvious, and for that matter, maybe it just totally is. The parallel that struck me almost immediately upon reading the series had to be Adolf Hitler, which, to be fair, isn't a massive reach. Both Voldemort and Hitler are depicted as ruthless dictators who seek power and dominance over others. They both have followers who are fiercely loyal to them and are willing to commit acts of violence and oppression in their name. They've also both got this supremacist ideology, believing in the superiority of their own group, pureblood wizards in Voldemort's case and the Aryan race in Hitler's, and in seeking to eliminate those they deem inferior and even rounding them up to do so. The only thing that ever struck me as slightly odd is the fact that in the very first book, we learned about how Dumbledore defeated the Dark Wizard Grindelwald in 1945, which happens to be the same year a Hitler-led Germany surrendered in World War II. I personally always found this to be slightly odd, but at that point in the writing, maybe the nod to 1945 at all was just supposed to be a small hint to the overarching parallel. That being said though, I recently stumbled across a character that I actually think fits Voldemort in a completely different way, and in this case, the inspiration predates the 20th century by a lot. Let's zoom back to Greek mythology and the character known as Sisyphus. Who is Sisyphus? Chances are, if you know none of the particulars, you have heard of his eternal struggle with the boulder. Yeah, he's that guy.
It's not just a boulder. It's a rock.
But if you don't know anything, then I'll give you the cliff notes. After his death, Sisyphus was condemned by the gods to push a large boulder to the top of a hill, only for the boulder to roll back down every single time he reached the top. By its very definition, it is an unwinnable task, an incompletable goal. You may have even heard the phrase Sisyphean to describe tasks that feel impossible, like getting all of the laundry done. No matter how much laundry you fold, the clothes that you are wearing are still in the act of becoming more laundry.
It never ends that way too.
But have you ever wondered why Sisyphus got stuck pushing the boulder up the hill? Like, what did he do that led him to this eternal struggle? Unsurprisingly, given his punishment in death, it turns out that Sisyphus was not a great dude while he was alive. He was a king and founder of the city Ephyra, but not a very good king. He had a real knack for disrespecting and upsetting the gods, and is famed for being the craftiest or most cunning of men. Oh, so he's known for being cunning and ambitious. Well, that sounds familiar, doesn't it? His initial claim to infame was his pleasure in breaking down what was known at the times as xenia, or guest obligations. This is the exact opposite of xenophobia. It's a Greek concept that you had a moral obligation to treat foreigners and guests with hospitality, and in doing so, honor Zeus. Sisyphus had a different approach though. Instead of treating his guests and travelers to his city with food or a welcome or even just a warm handshake, he would instead kill them. You know, to demonstrate how powerful he was, to create fear and maintain his iron-fisted rule. Now, not only is this considered extremely poor manners, but it made Zeus, like, super mad. I mean, as it should. But hey, why just disrespect the king of the gods when you could also go behind his back? Personally, I would fear eternal damnation, spoilers, but Sisyphus believed himself cleverer than the gods and did not fear them. Quick question, asking for a friend, is cleverer a word? So he made a deal with the river god, Aesopus. Sisyphus agreed to reveal to Aesopus the location of his daughter Aegina, whom Zeus had carried off, if Aesopus caused a spring to flow on the Acropolis of his city. Translation, he wanted water to flow near his city for trade reasons. Money, for money. Always money. Basically, he gave up one of Zeus's secrets for extra wealth, and this was apparently the last straw for Zeus, who ordered Thanatos, or Death, to chain up Sisyphus in Tartarus. Don't worry, this is the first time I've ever said all of these words in the same sentence before, so if it's like, whew, Was for me too. If you don't know, Tartarus is a giant abyss that is used like a dungeon to imprison and torture the Titans. I think in the movie Hercules, this is like that lightning bolt great thing underneath the sea, maybe, possibly, I don't know. I'm told Hercules was incredibly accurate in all ways.
I'm an action figure!
It wasn't? Oh, I'm lost again. But Sisyphus was so clever that he was able to trick Thanatos into the chains himself and managed to escape death, and since he had trapped death, it also meant that nobody on Earth could die. Thanatos? I'm doing great today, y'all. I'm doing good. I waded into these waters and now I just have to bathe in them. Which, on the one hand, nobody being able to die, that doesn't sound like the worst, but it stopped those who were sick and suffering and old from dying, and stopped anyone from being able to make sacrifices to the gods. So yeah, they didn't like that part of it very much either. That part, maybe I'm more okay with. I don't know how much we need to be doing sacrifices, you know? I'm not pro sacrifice, unless you're Harry. That was a specific situation, and he came out, you know what I mean. He was fine! Unable to kill him though, the gods threatened to make his life so miserable he'd wish he were dead, spoilers, at which point Sisyphus finally released death. But he wasn't done cheating death yet, as when he finally actually died himself, he instructed his wife, Merope, to not follow proper death rituals, but instead cast his naked body into the middle of the town. Wait, is this going back to the laundry thing from before? Naked, no clothes, nothing to get dirty? And we called it a Sisyphean task. This allowed him to bargain in the underworld with Persephone and convince her that the gods had been disrespected and he should go back up there and deal with his wife. But naturally, after he got back out, he just stayed until being forcibly dragged back down by Hermes, where at long last he died and was doled out punishment by Hades for his crimes.
Game, set, match.
See, Hercules, totally accurate. This is when Sisyphus would finally be forced to push a boulder up a hill for eternity. It's happening still, right now, out there, somewhere, pushing, boulder, hill. So what does any of this have to do with Voldemort? Well, you guys are smart, so I bet you picked up on a lot of it along the way, but they have quite a lot in common, and maybe in ways you didn't totally realize. First of all, Voldemort himself is quite a terrible tyrant. He enjoys killing people to induce fear and maintain his own iron grip. And I honestly don't feel like this gets enough attention in the story at all, but he kills like a lot of people. Like so many off-screen muggles, like that entire lake full of Inferi, the Death Eaters don't even know that he's making horcruxes. So that whole project is a secret personal pet project of his to protect the locket. Meaning he killed all of those people personally. Jeez. People just skate by this one. This is like the area where I feel like Umbridge is worse than Voldemort. Like no. Nothing's worse than that. But don't get me wrong, Umbridge is the worst. Just not the worst, you get it.
Ask me to remind you.
Speaking of horcruxes, Voldemort, much like Sisyphus, is doing everything he can to cheat death. This really is his move. No matter how many times Harry beats him, it seems like he still never fully crosses over to the other side. He always has a way back. Then there is the futility of his efforts. The first is the Sisyphean task. It's rolling the boulder up the hill. For Voldemort, it fits perfectly in two different ways. His recklessness with his own soul leaves it so badly tattered that a piece of itself lives inside of Harry, giving Harry extremely valuable insight into Voldemort's plans. Voldemort is just simply always doomed to fail. His pride prevents him from allowing anyone else to attack Harry. It must be him. This is also why he's determined to use Harry's own blood to return a goblet of fire, which tethers Harry to life via Lily's sacrifice. And on that note, his unwillingness or inability to understand love makes him blind to all sorts of powerful magic, like Lily's protection. And it just goes on and on. Like even his determination to punish the Malfoys leads to Draco's mastery of the Elder Wand, which is ultimately taken from Draco by Harry and is central to Voldemort's defeat. Voldemort is really Voldemort's own worst enemy, not Harry. All of his efforts are futile always. The rock always rolls back down the hill. Then there's the rock itself. Like I said, in theory, Sisyphus is still out there somewhere pushing it and will never ever be able to successfully make it. And this is Voldemort in death, which I put in air quotes because Voldemort doesn't truly even die at the end of the story. But it's not like in a he's still out there biding his time kind of way, but in a his soul is so badly mangled it cannot ever leave limbo kind of way. Just a scaly, bloody, forever existence of nothingness, his own perpetual rock to push with no hope of ever prevailing. And last but certainly not least has to be the connection to Merope. Now, as we all are aware in Harry Potter, Merope is Tom Riddle's mother and certainly not his spouse, as is the case with Sisyphus. The name similarity cannot be a mistake. Let me explain. Merope is also from Greek mythology, but is no mortal. Instead, Merope is one of the 7 daughters of Atlas, but considered a bit of an outcast for her decision to marry the mortal man, Sisyphus. Does this sound familiar? Well, it should, because this can be clearly reflected in the Wizarding World's version of Merope and her decision to marry Tom Riddle Sr. Even though the relationship is different, it feels like all the more likely the true reason why Tom Riddle shares his name with his Muggle father. Honestly, for me, I just found this to be so interesting as we kind of like kept going further down the rabbit hole. It just seemed like everything else continued to line up, but I also sort of love the idea that Voldemort is just this person out there trying to win this otherwise unwinnable task. Like, as formidable as he may seem, he's got no chance at success. It's never going to work out. And I love that. Hey, brother! Guys, over on Through the Gryffindor, we have been combing through Chamber of Secrets sentence by sentence, trying to turn over as many rocks as possible, and it's amazing to me how over 25 years later, there are still so many little treasures to be found. Like, for example, last week, realizing that the diary was not the first horcrux after all, but the second, or what we're going to be talking about this week. Was making the diary a horcrux a total mistake on Tom Riddle's part? We do know, of course, that he wanted to have a 7-part soul, so certainly he was going to make more, but did he ever intend for the diary to be one? Personally, I'm starting to think no, because the diary itself is just so unique compared to the others. It's not a powerfully magical object ahead of time. Tom doesn't personally commit the murder, and its use is much more offensive compared to defensive like the rest of the horcruxes. In the end, I don't think he's upset with the diary as a horcrux, as it does end up being really useful and nearly accomplishes its task, but did he mean to make it in the first place? Today, we're gonna find out. The real issue comes down to some order of operations and conflicting information that we get from Tom Riddle. We know in 1942, the first time the Basilisk is unleashed, that there were a series of attacks leading up to the eventual death of Moaning Myrtle. Myrtle's account of the event goes like this. It happened right in here. I died in this very stall. I remember it so well. I'd hidden because Olive Hornby was teasing me about my glasses. The door was locked, and I was crying, and then I heard somebody come in. They said something funny, a different language, I think it must have been. Anyway, what really got me was that it was a boy speaking, so I unlocked the door to tell him to go and use his own toilet, and then I died. So, Tom comes into the bathroom to summon the Basilisk, assuming that the bathroom is just empty. Unfortunately for him, he's not the only bully at school, and Olive Hornby has unexpectedly sent Myrtle crying in there ahead of him. So he opens the chamber, Myrtle emerges to tell him off, and then Tom realizes that he's caught. So like, what is he supposed to do? Kill her, obviously. Can't have her blabbing, and she's even Muggle-born, which works out nicely for him. But I don't personally think that he walked into the bathroom intending on killing Myrtle. It just sort of happened. In fact, I'm not even sure that the Basilisk even has true intentions of killing at all. Like, no matter how much it may be whispering like, inside of the walls, consider the following. During Harry's second year, there are 5 total attacks. Mrs. Norris, Justin Finch-Fletchley, Colin Creevey, Penelope Clearwater, and Hermione. All 5 of these fail in the attempt to actually kill the victim. Then, when we return back to the last time the chamber was opened, we get the following during Riddle's conversation with Armando Dippet. The thing is, Tom, he sighed, special arrangements might have been made for you, but in the current circumstances, you mean all of these attacks, sir? Said Riddle, and Harry's heart leapt, and he moved closer, scared of missing anything. In this scene, Riddle is hoping for a way to stay at Hogwarts, but the death of Myrtle, in Dippet's opinion, ultimately makes it just simply too dangerous. The point is, though, that Riddle refers to attacks, plural. You mean all of these attacks, sir? In order to have multiple attacks and then a death, it at minimum means that there were 2 attacks plus Myrtle's death. That's going to bring the basilisk's success rate to a mere 1 out of 8 victims, or 12.5%, when all it has to do to actually kill someone is look at them. And that's assuming that there are only 2 attacks before Myrtle. So we're actually like in conservative territory here. But also, just looking at someone is just the easiest way for the basilisk to kill someone. It also has fangs that possess the most powerful venom we are even aware of inside of the wizarding world. So I hate to, drop a theory inside of a different theory, but something about this leads me to believe that potentially Salazar Slytherin himself actively instructed the basilisk to never look a victim directly in the eye. As for all of that, like ripping and tearing that the basilisk is always going on about, I have to imagine it's the spider webs inside of the pipes, they're mortal enemies after all. Spiders, basilisks. And you can argue that all you want, but the facts are the facts. The basilisk sucks at killing or even really harming anyone in any way. The point is, though, that the only time it actually does succeed in killing anyone is the situation with Myrtle, where she happens upon the scene versus, the other way around. At this point, though, Tom has already made 1 horcrux, the ring, and he's already talked to Slughorn about making more, and now he has a dead body on his hands, a great opportunity to make another. Right? Actually, quick side note here, because this is another exception. This is the only Horcrux death that doesn't come at Voldemort's own hand. The basilisk gets the kill, which also means that one doesn't have to personally perform the kill in order to create the Horcrux. Which brings us to our next extremely vital point, which is that most of the Horcrux kills are intended to pair alongside very significant deaths. And again, he's already created the ring Horcrux, which came from the death of his Muggle father, Tom Riddle Sr. Then from there, Dumbledore even goes on to further this point by suggesting to Harry that he was preserving the opportunity to create his final Horcrux with Harry's own death. However, if my calculations are correct, Voldemort was still at least 1 Horcrux short of his goal of 6 when he entered your parents' house with the intention of killing you. He seems to have reserved the process of making Horcruxes for particularly significant deaths. You would have certainly been that. He believed that in killing you, he was destroying the danger the prophecy had outlined. He believed that he was making himself invincible. I am sure that he was intending to make his final Horcrux with your death. Now, to be fair, we also know that Voldemort doesn't vehemently stick to this position. The death for Nagini is Bertha Jorkins, and according to Sirius, she was an idiot. But the thing is, by that point, Voldemort knows that the diary has been destroyed and has to use a little bit of opportunity to ensure his immortality. Myrtle's death at the absolute best relies on her blood status of being Muggle-born, but is otherwise a kind of unpopular student who happens to be in the girls' bathroom. She wasn't targeted or selected, she was just already there. Speaking of just already being there, this is where I think we could potentially enter into the waters of the unintentional usage of the diary as his second Horcrux. The diary isn't important or magical. In fact, we have considerable reason to believe he might actively resent this object. We know that the diary is purchased at a Muggle shop. Harry turned to the back cover of the book and saw the printed name of a variety store on Vauxhall Road, London. He must have been Muggle-born, said Harry thoughtfully, to have bought a diary from Vauxhall Road. Now, this is of course a bit of a misdirect when you're reading the story for the first time, because we're meant to believe whoever T.M. Riddle isn't nefarious. But even the inclusion of the name T.M. Riddle is something we know Voldemort, even as a 16-year-old, is actively rejecting. Voldemort was a name I was already using at Hogwarts, to my most intimate friends only, of course. You think I was going to use my filthy Muggle father's name forever? So you mean to tell me this Muggle diary that features a name that Tom Riddle loathes fits this sentiment from Dumbledore? You are thinking of portkeys, Harry, which must be ordinary objects, easy to overlook. But would Lord Voldemort use tin cans or old potion bottles to guard his own precious soul? You are forgetting what I have showed you. Lord Voldemort liked to collect trophies, and he preferred objects with a powerful magical history. His pride, his belief in his own superiority, his determination to carve for himself a startling place in magical history. These things suggest to me that Voldemort would have chosen his Horcruxes with some care, favoring objects worthy of the honor. Let's put some of these pieces together. The basilisk not Tom, that has a terrible kill record, is interrupted by the ever unimportant, though I'm sure otherwise completely lovely, Myrtle Warren, who does in fact die, and in the name of not wasting the death and without an otherwise important magical artifact, must instead use what he already has on hand, or simply in his pocket, the diary. So boom, it becomes a horcrux. By necessity. Are y'all picking up what I'm throwing down here? But now hold on, I'm sure you're saying, like Tom tells Harry that he intended this, that he knew it was going to be dangerous to open up the Chamber of Secrets again. I knew it wouldn't be safe to open the chamber again while I was still at school, but I wasn't going to waste those long years I'd spent searching for it. I decided to leave behind a diary, preserving my 16-year-old self in its pages, so that one day, with luck, I would be able to lead another in my footsteps and finish Salazar Slytherin's noble work. Okay, sure, fair enough, but the real reason he stops opening the chamber isn't fear of getting caught. It's fear of the school closing. You will be safer by far at your orphanage. As a matter of fact, the Ministry of Magic is even now talking about closing the school. We are no nearer to locating the, source of all this unpleasantness. Riddle's eyes had widened. Sir, if the person that was caught, if it all stopped. The thing is though, Myrtle is already dead by the time he learns this information, meaning he has turned the diary into a horcrux before he knows it's too dangerous to open the chamber again and risk the school closing. So when he kills Myrtle, he's not planning on needing to instruct someone else to open the Chamber of Secrets. He just plans on continuing to do it. Meaning he really had no plans of using the diary in that capacity at that time, but after he decides it's too dangerous to open it himself, he realizes he has this new horcrux at his disposal that he can now kill two birds with one stone with. Not only does the diary then become an important artifact that proves his lineage to Salazar Slytherin, but it can be used to carry out an unfinished mission. Even this acts counter to the objective of every other horcrux in that its usage is far more offensive than defensive. Every other horcrux, save for maybe Nagini, is massively and carefully hidden. This is because the harder it is to locate, the harder it is for anyone to realize they've ever been created in the first place. And even if they somehow did, it would be even harder to destroy if they somehow just stumbled across one. Think of the locket, for example, in that far away cave that required a blood sacrifice to enter, then is surrounded by Inferi and covered by the Drink of Despair. The diary, on the other hand, is meant to be placed in someone's hand. It's meant to act of its own accord. It has a complete other mission aside from protecting Voldemort's soul, which is otherwise the very chief function of a horcrux. In a lot of ways, you can almost see a world where Voldemort, maybe even himself, realized it stood apart from the rest and valued this particular horcrux the least. In fact, had he been more considerate about this creation in particular, Voldemort may have never been undone. Dumbledore tells us as much. The careless way in which Voldemort regarded this horcrux seemed most ominous to me. It suggested that he must have made, or been planning to make, more horcruxes, so that the loss of his first would not be so detrimental. I did not wish to believe it, but nothing else seemed to make sense. And why was he so careless with this one? Because it was the mistake. The one that doesn't fit with anything else we know about Voldemort. Because it's the one he never planned. Chewie, can we all just say, like, good thing Myrtle was crying in the bathroom that day, huh? Because if not for that, not for that.
50 points and it goes through her head!
The other thing that I absolutely love about this theory is that Myrtle is like the second victim properly ever that is actually like killed, and also basically the catalyst and result for Dumbledore ultimately learning about the usage of horcruxes, period, because the diary that Harry ultimately gives him. And that's what leads him down the pathway to discover every other thing. So it basically means Voldemort, from just about as close to the beginning as he could possibly be, was doomed.
Hey brother! Guys, it is time for another Google autofill, and today is a special one because today we are asking, why does Voldemort Google autofill? Which, if you are a very long time viewer, you may recall I've actually done this one before in 2015. Today, it's why does Voldemort Google autofill? Wow. Look at me go. That was pre-full-time Super Carlin Brothers, pre-marriage. Like, I had a whole different job at that time. A lot has changed since then. We have a much nicer intro. We're not using the onboard camera microphone, which actually have the original little SCB camera. This is where it all started. Like, I wonder if it still works.
Oh my God, it does. Does it like look and sound like 2015? I'm doing the thing where I look over here and I need to look here. I always made that mistake. I was really hoping the camera might explain why my hair looked so bad back then, but maybe I was just off my shampoo routine.
But also, since then, maybe people have Googled, like, you know, new things about the Dark Lord. So today, let's bring Why Does Voldemort Google Autofill into the present. If you're not familiar with the Google autofill game, it is super easy. We just go to Google, type in why does Voldemort, and then each letter of the alphabet, and Google fills in the rest of the question, which I then answer with 100%-ish accuracy. Occasionally, Google will throw in an extra word or modifier at the beginning, but that's okay, we just roll with it. A, why does Voldemort always steal my shampoo? Oh, I remember this one. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe nobody Googles anything new ever.
Oh, I bet he has invisible hair. Oh, I bet it's amazing.
I still don't know why people are Googling this. And if you try and Google why people are Googling it, you'll just get results for people asking, why is this an autofill result? Is this some like secret Google code? What is going on? Or probably more realistically, it's just still a problem. Maybe Voldemort is still out there robbing you all of your hair cleanser. Heck, maybe that's what was happening to me back in 2015. Voldemort was stealing my shampoo. Although I have to say, clearly I got the better of him. I feel like I'm actually having a marvelous hair day today. But like, what does Voldemort even need shampoo for? The man has no hair. Or does he? Okay, wait for it. New theory. Voldemort has invisible hair. The real question then is, what kind of hairstyle is he rocking under there? Like bangs? Afro? Mullet? No, actually, no, definitely. It's definitely mullet. B, why does Voldemort become evil? Well, I wouldn't say he becomes evil. In fact, I would argue he was born evil. It all has to do with the circumstances of his birth. Like, we all know his mother, Merope Gaunt, used the love potion to force the handsome muggle Tom Riddle to conceive a baby with her. Then, after she was pregnant, she thought the baby would be enough reason for him to stick around without the potion anymore, but obviously she was dead wrong about that. He was not in love with her, not there for the baby, and quickly abandoned both of them. And Dumbledore has this to say about how it affected her. I am guessing again, but I am sure I am right, that when her husband abandoned her, Merope stopped using magic. I do not think that she wanted to be a witch any longer. AKA, she began repressing her magic while she was pregnant. And if you don't know what happens when a witch or wizard starts doing that, it's exactly what happened to Dumbledore's little sister, Ariana. They form an obscurus, a kind of magical cancer that is almost always fatal. It's what Credence is in Fantastic Beasts. So our theory is that the obscurus became intermingled with, fetus Voldemort, and he grows up into a kind of walking, talking, magical cancer conceived out of love, destined for evil. C, why does Voldemort call Peter Wormtail? That is actually a really good point, because they must have talked about it at some point, right?
Pettigrew, what news do you have for us from the Order of the Phoenix?
Actually, my lord, could you call me Wormtail? All my friends do.
I am not your friend, Pettigrew, but that name is pretty cool. You can turn into... I'll meet you halfway. How does Wormbutt sound?
D, why does Voldemort die from Expelliarmus? I can see why you might think that, as it is the spell Harry fires at him in the final duel, after which Voldemort dies, that Expelliarmus kills him, but that is not what happens. In that duel, Voldemort is using the Elder Wand against Harry, who is at that moment the actual master of the Elder Wand. So when Voldemort tries to use it against Harry, it backfires and Voldemort actually Avada Kedavras himself, which is great because it means Harry never actually had to kill anyone. But if you're wondering why that didn't happen in the forest, it's because Harry didn't raise his wand to defend himself. He was trying to die. So if he had fought back in the forest, then the same thing would have happened to Voldemort, but then the horcrux in Harry and Nagini would have still been active, inactive, so Voldemort would have just reverted back to that like mist form. E, why does Voldemort eat unicorns? I love this phrasing. Like, I love the idea of Voldemort at a restaurant ordering this.
Yes, I'll have the unicorn steak as rare as possible. Breathing if you can manage it. And what about you, Wormbutt? Do you want anything? Maybe some cheese?
No, sorry, that was not the laugh.
In case you guys didn't know, that's our favorite clip.
That is our most used clip here, in case you couldn't tell. Either way, I think this question is actually asking, why does he drink unicorn blood, which will keep you alive even if you're an inch away from death at the cost of living a half-life, a cursed life. But who would choose such a life? That's what we're told, but here's the catch. Voldemort already has the horcruxes at that point, and so already can't die. The reason they're killing the unicorns is to protect Quirrell from dying. During the time when Voldemort is powerless, he would occasionally possess like rats and snakes for a time, but his presence inside of the animal would usually kill them pretty quickly. Quirrell, however, is a wizard and so can handle Voldemort a lot longer, but sure enough, he's still zapping the life out of him, and while Voldemort has no real concern for Quirrell's life or well-being, he does need him to get the stone back so he can get his own body back. F, why does Voldemort fear Dumbledore? This is indeed a tricky one. Like, is it just because Dumbledore is really powerful and could beat him in a duel? No. Think about it. Voldemort has no reason to fear that. Even if he lost, he has the horcruxes and would just come back. Plus, the prophecy says only Harry is a threat to him, and yet he continues to fear Dumbledore. Why? It's because every time Voldemort meets Dumbledore, Dumbledore seems to know everything. Like, he knows about him bullying the other kids at the orphanage. He knows Hagrid didn't open the Chamber of Secrets. He knows the name Lord Voldemort before he should. He knows that Voldemort has Death Eaters waiting in the village nearby. Dumbledore just seems to know everything all the time, which is a problem because Dumbledore argues that love is the most powerful kind of magic in the world. Voldemort, of course, thinks that's hilarious. There it is again. But in the back of his mind, he knows that Dumbledore does keep being right about everything. And like, what if he's right about this too? Which if he is, he's kind of screwed because as we've already established, Voldemort is incapable of loving. It's that little seed of doubt Dumbledore planted in the back of his mind, basically the moment he met him, that love is more powerful than anything Voldemort will ever do, that really makes Voldemort fear Dumbledore. G, why does Voldemort go after Harry? Well, this one's actually pretty easy. Professor Trelawney makes a prophecy saying that the one with the power to defeat the Dark Lord will be born at the end of July to parents who have thrice defied him. Snape overhears her making the prophecy and then goes and tells Voldemort at least the first half of it. And it turns out it could be referring to either Harry or Neville, but Voldemort deems it to be meant about Harry because Harry is a half-blood just like him. H, why does Voldemort hate Muggles? I mean, mostly because it's good for his platform and like recruiting Death Eaters and stuff. I mean, if your whole thing is just that like pure-blooded wizards are the best things on Earth, then it just follows that the less magical blood you have, the more despicable you are. Plus, I guess his Muggle father abandoned him and his mother before he was born, so that probably plays into it too. I, why was Voldemort in Albania? Which time? Just kidding, I'll cover both. They're connected. He summers there.
But bring me the sunscreen and top off my bye tie.
Why? What cocktail do you think he drinks? So after Voldemort attacks Harry as a baby, he flees to the forest of Albania to hide out for the next 10 years until Quirrell finds him. But the reason he chooses his location is because someone else chose it first, one Helena Ravenclaw, aka the Grey Lady who hid Ravenclaw's diadem in the same forest, and I guess Voldemort just thought it was a private enough place that he could hide out in peace. Also, if you're hiding, no one can come help you, but I guess Wormtail or Wormbutt already knows, but then I guess Dumbledore also seems to know, so why doesn't he? J, why does Voldemort just disintegrate? I love how personal that one was. But it's fairly simple. You see, the Battle of Hogwarts is actually happening at the same time as the Battle of Wakanda, and Voldemort just doesn't survive the snap. Also, actually, this whole flaking away thing is just a movie thing, so you know for sure that he's really dead, but in the books, he just collapses and is a regular old dead body. They moved Voldemort's body and laid it in a chamber off the hall, away from the bodies of Fred, Tonks, Lupin, Colin Creevey, and 50 others who had died fighting him. 50? by the ledger. K, why did Voldemort kill Grindelwald? You know, I guess he really doesn't have to, does he? But as his reason for visiting him is part of his quest for the Elder Wand, and he's under the belief that you need to kill its previous owner, then killing Grindelwald is probably just good sense to cover your bases. L, why does Voldemort look like a snake? Indeed, there is a two-part answer for this one. First, just the act of splitting his soul so many times to make his horcruxes transforms his body some. Dumbledore describes it when Voldemort goes in for the job interview. Actually, it's more like Harry describes it, but whatever. They were not as snake-like. The eyes were not yet scarlet, the face not yet mask-like, and yet he was no longer handsome Tom Riddle. It was as though his features had been burned and blurred. They were waxy and oddly distorted, and the whites of his eyes now had a permanently bloody look, though the pupils were not yet the slits that Harry knew they would become. That's when Voldemort is there interviewing for the Defense Against the Dark Arts position, and he's actually there to hide the diadem. So at that point, he's already made as many of his horcruxes as he'll make before attacking Harry. So pre-falling that night, he actually did not look like a snake yet, just like a distorted version of himself, but definitely transformed. Upon his revival in the graveyard, though, there is one specific ingredient in the potion that brings him back that ends up making him look more snake-like. The venom of Nagini. This is the snake-like part of the potion that makes his eyes red, gives him slits for eyelids and nostrils, and bear in mind that Nagini herself used to be human, so you can almost see where like her venom was so useful in turning him into a man that looks like a snake. M, why does Voldemort milk Nagini? Is there a less comfortable two words in the whole story? Dolores Umbridge. Yeah, it turns out.
To remind you.
Either way, when he says milk Nagini, what he means is harvesting her venom for the potion for his revival. All right, we made it through. And why does Voldemort need to kill Harry? You know, the thing is, he does not need to. If he just carried on being evil without paying Harry or the prophecy any mind at all, he totally would have succeeded. In fact, even after that, if he'd just let anyone else kill Harry, they would have succeeded.
Wombat, listen up. You're the Potter's secret keeper, right? And you can transform into a rat, right? So here's what I'm thinking. Tomorrow night, you just like sneak in and wow.
Game over. Although to be fair, I feel like if Wormbutt had been given that task, he could not have done it. I don't think he could have killed James's baby, which is about as much as I can say for Wormbutt. If your only line you're not crossing is killing babies. You'll let someone else do it! Oh, why does Voldemort only use Avada Kedavra? I mean, usually his goal is to kill people, and it is the most effective way to do that, but he does also use other spells. I mean, he has the whole duel with Dumbledore, and casts Crucio and Imperio on Harry in the graveyard, does that whole silver hand thing for Wormbutt. He is very, very good at magic and does all sorts of spells, but he's also just like really, really good at killing. It's like his favorite thing. P, why does Voldemort prefer Twitter to Facebook? Come here. Closer.
Because he only has followers, not friends.
Q, why was Voldemort on Quirrell's head? Easy one. So after Quirrell fails to steal the Philosopher's Stone from Gringotts, Voldemort is all like,
Yo, Turbinator, that sucked. From now on, I'm keeping a much closer eye on you. By which I mean 2 eyes literally on the back of your head. I hope you're a stomach sleeper.
He is not, you know. What's Voldemort gonna do about it? Oh, sorry, could you not breathe? Hope you don't die. R, why did Voldemort run from Dumbledore? I assume this means at the Battle of the Ministry, but like basically Dumbledore had dueled him into a stalemate, and Voldemort's final ace up his sleeve of possessing Harry fails miserably, and at that point the rest of the Ministry shows up.
He's back.
So yeah, at that point, time to vamoose.
Van Smoot, Lily! Van Smoot!
This is a different word, but that's what it makes me think.
Van Smoot!
S, why does Voldemort steal my shampoo? I'm telling you guys, it's for his invisible hair. Or I guess maybe for Snape, although I guess even with all that shampoo he's stealing, it's like not helping, or maybe Snape's just like not using it?
Obviously.
Or maybe it's actually for Lucius to do research for his own line of shampoo, Luscious by Lucius. I mean, that guy knows something about hair. How you think we're funding this Dark Lord campaign, T, why does Voldemort trust Snape? Not because of his hair care routine, I'll tell you that. No, this is an odd one because like he and Dumbledore kind of share this exact flaw. Like they both believe Snape is lying to the other one and they both must realize that only one of them can be right. But Voldemort's reason for believing in Snape's loyalty is fear, while Dumbledore's is love, which ironically is the very reason Voldemort fears him. U, why does Voldemort use Nagini to kill Snape?
Listen here, you greased up weasel bat. If I'm stealing all that shampoo for you, I expect you to use it. This is my day of triumph and you look like a baconator. A deep fried stick of butter. Worm butt after he's milked Nagini. That jar of gross fat Molly Weasley keeps by the sink. You know how your hands feel after you've held a fish?
I'm pretty proud of that one.
No, I'm sweating.
The entire North Carolina State Fair. LAX to Dulles. 2-hour delay on the tarmac in July. Middle seat.
How is it not killing your voice?
Oh, it is. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's how you look right now. It's disrespectful. Normally I'd kill you myself, but Nagini likes greasy food, so eat up.
I'm still thinking about the fish. No, but actually, in the moment, Voldemort thinks Snape is the master of the Elder Wand and that if he attacks him with it, the wand will backfire, so he uses Nagini instead. But ironically, that exact thing is what happens to him when he does fight Harry. V, why does Voldemort vape so much? You know, I don't know that he does, but it would not surprise me at all and kind of like even explain like the weird
Raspy voice. Worm butt, robe me. Now, do you have any mint jewel pods or anything? I could really go for a puff.
I mean, you just know that just off screen in the graveyard, Voldemort has one of those like tacky vape shops with like the bright flashing neon lights, right?
Voldy's Vapes, Snake Mango, now in stock.
I hate those places so much. W, why does Voldemort want the prophecy? Right, so the first time he hears it, he only gets the first half, which he thought was enough information to go on to kill Harry, but then like 2 failed attempts later, he seems to think maybe he needs to know the rest of it to make a more informed murder plot, which actually if he had gotten it there in year 5, I don't think it would have made any difference, but I suppose if he'd heard the whole thing from the beginning, he'd have heard the part about marking Harry as his equal and maybe wouldn't have attacked him at all to begin with. Nothing for X. Why? Why does Harry call Voldemort you-know-who? Well, for the most part, he doesn't. He really only does it at the very beginning because he's trying to adapt to wizard culture and norms, but abandons it pretty quickly after he's faced him. Although he does resort to this again in Deathly Hallows after Ron has like a surprisingly good instinct about not saying it. Something I don't think we give Ron enough credit for. Like, he just instincts out the taboo. Like, he notices like an intangible curse go into effect. Z, why does Voldemort zen? Zen? What is zen? Hold on, I'm gonna look it up. Oh, it's like the vape form of dip? Just like a straight nicotine pouch you put in your lip? Like, why would you, what? Is that, do people do this? I don't know, but I bet he gets some discounts over at Voldy's Vapes. But there you go, guys. That's everything Google wanted to know about Voldemort in 2024.
These socks are amazing!
You guys, thanks so much for watching this video. Don't forget to ring that bell or subscribe so you don't miss any new future Harry Potter content from us. And in case you didn't know, Ben and I have recently launched a brand new Harry Potter podcast called Through the Griffin Door. It is like the world's greatest Harry Potter book club. Each week we read another chapter in the series and then we just discuss it at length, almost sentence by sentence. So if that sounds like something you would like to listen into, you can check out that video right here. Or if you want to check out like the original Voldemort Google autofill, I wouldn't because it's so old, but that's right here. Otherwise, Ben, until next time, I will see you in another life, brother.